Good people, I'm Dmitry. Today we have a really exciting and I think an exclusive look at the new Lian Li Q58. This case really brings some new, interesting and unique features into the ITX space. I'm sure many people will appreciate them as we go over them, and I also appreciate the fact that this is not a massive enclosure. At around 15 liters, it's kind of competitive to like the NR200P from Cooler Master and the Meshalicious from Supt. It also has its own visual distinct character, which I appreciate, so it's not like a Dan case copy or an NR200 clone, it's its own case. And at $120, I hope it's going to be competitive with the expected launch date sometime around June. Add some fun to your space with Xtrfy, designed in Sweden with focus on quality products built on experience. You're looking at Project 4, their 4th generation of products with super cool colorways to stand out, with matching sets to satisfy with a solid B4 bungee, lightweight ergonomic M4 mouse, the K4 keyboard is fantastic, all of which are performance focused, and finish it off with colorful GP4 mouse mats that are bold in design and smooth on the surface. The retro theme in particular has got the feels. Complete your setup with Xtrfy. No regrets guaranteed. Alright, so first let's cover the exterior. It's elegant with nice touch of simplicity. You can see we have clean uniform lines all around the enclosure with that unique dual texture look, both on the materials and the finishes too. So the front panel, for example, has that matte texture on the top and a glossy but without the brush texture at the bottom. While for the sides, we have that dual panel action, both of which sit on swivel hinges and can be removed easily. Both are held in with strong magnets, but the glass panel also has an additional thumb screw to hold it in place securely. The bottom one, as you can see, is this high performance metal mesh for both airflow and dust filtration, and the TG panel for the top to reveal some of your hardware, and the built-in illumination strip at the top that is both soft, addressable, and can be controlled independently via the case. The front I/O is standard for ITX, I would say, with USB-C, only a single USB-A, a 4-pole headset jack, and a power button. As for build quality and materials, this is a prototype, but it's still a very solid one, and we're gonna have all aluminum exterior with the glass side panels and a steel frame. And so overall, with this design direction, I'm satisfied. It has a character of its own. It's got that dual tone finish, so not completely solid, and it has some functionality behind having those mesh bottom panels that will contribute to better airflow. As for full specifications of the case, so this is around 15 liters in volume, triple slot 320mm GPUs will fit, CPU towers up to 70mm will fit too, with top radiator support for 240 or 280, SFX, SFX-L, and ATX power supply options are available. And that ATX power supply option is very interesting, how they're able to fit it in such a tiny enclosure. So getting inside, we have the standard dual chamber layout like with many other ITX cases in this frame structure. So triple slot on the GPU side with a riser cable included, but make sure to familiarize yourself with all the potential issues you might encounter with the riser cable in this video right over here. But the added height of the enclosure allows this really thin form factor, as the radiator is installed on the top bracket that is easily removable and installed back into the frame via the top. The advantage of this configuration versus having the radiator on the side, like we see with many other cases of this form factor, including the NR200, is that you don't get that exhaust into your space. If you have the case right beside you here, everything is exhausted through the top, and you should not physically feel that. So here's the ITX motherboard spot. It is upside down. Beside it is the power supply bracket and the GPU area behind it, but there are plenty of cool new features inside the Q58. So first of all, you can move the SFX power supply bracket down slightly to accommodate the 280 rad at the top. You lose a bit of clearance for cables underneath the power supply in this configuration, but I still appreciate the added cooling option. There is a removable plate underneath the power supply that can house a 120mm fan for additional intake into the case, and it is dust proof, or this can be used for an SSD mount as well. It is nice also to have this bracket removed during assembly because it gives you full access into all your cables. We also have this additional plate for a 3.5-inch drive or an SSD that can go in place of any 120mm fan mounts, either up top or the side. And since we have the triple slot GPU chamber, these side brackets let you install low profile fans for additional cooling on the GPU side. Furthermore, we have an interior fan hub with smart placement at the rear on the swivel bracket, letting you route all your fans and addressable lighting cables without having to strain your fingers. This is a brilliant design, thank you Lian Li, especially because you can access that top plate from the back without needing to access everything on the interior. There are also these two discrete buttons for LED mode and color beside the Lian Li logo if you don't want to connect the addressable cable into your motherboard. Then there's a seamless hot swappable SSD mount at the front with interior SATA cables included and removable plate to help you take out the SSD, as it's quite snug in there, but I still was able to remove it with my fingers. Finger power. And finally, there's that ATX power supply mode. So this bracket allows installation of an ATX PSU plus a 120 or 140 fan for the CPU area or a 120mm all-in-one cooler. And this requires you to move that entire middle plate towards the GPU side, in which case you lose one PCI slot, but gain all that room for a standard ATX PSU. By the way, motherboard standoffs are included for this configuration since you only move the middle section and their rear IO stays as is. This direction for the Q58 allows it to stand out among other similar sized ITX cases that do not support ATX power supplies, and while it comes with its own limitations like smaller GPU chamber and worse cooling for the CPU because only you can do a 120mm all-in-one cooler, but still it allows you to use your existing ATX power supplies, and not everything in the ITX space has to be like full power, you know what I mean? The only thing Lian Li has to make sure to do right is markings on the actual frame so that you don't get confused onto which screws you need to remove, because in my prototype and using like a really early stages manual, I was able to finalize and figure out how to do it. But from an end user's perspective, it'd be great to have something on the actual frame that shows you which holes are for an ITX PSU orientation versus an ATX mode. Now, after my brief assembly, I encountered a few little hiccups. My main concern here was with the riser cable, as it was hitting my top radiator fan without any real way to fold the cable out of the way. I'm working here with a prototype, but Lian Li has already addressed it with a built-in bracket that will hold the riser cable so it doesn't bump into your fans. And my second concern after I finished the system was I'm not completely sold on that mesh and tempered glass approach, because at the top, what are you showcasing? Some radiators and maybe some cables, and so you will have to do a really good job with cleaning all your cables so they're not visible at the top. I also do not like that power extension cable, as it's kind of bulky and it's right there behind the glass. A quick word on cable management. I hate doing cable management, especially in ITX cases, but I had no problems here, even though all the IO cables were incredibly long. I had to like zip tie them before routing because otherwise they're just way too long. On the final retail release, they will be shorter. Thank you. And also because the motherboard area is so thin, it requires you to position the pump tubes facing back in order for them to kind of stay low profile and out of the way for the side panel. And so that is my overview on the new Lian Li Q58. I'm really excited to see what they do with the final release in terms of refining a few things. And I think this is going to be a successful ITX enclosure because the price is not too high, yet you still get tempered glass, aluminum, a really solid interior steel frame. I feel like the interior guts are perfectly modular for the modern 2021 SFF ITX enthusiast. So like a 240 or a 280 plus a triple slot GPU, that's perfectly fine for me. Plus that additional ATX power supply support, if you're going that route, it is available on such a tiny enclosure. But I would love to hear your opinion on the Q58 down in the comments below. I know that the situation with components and hardware is very difficult right now, but the expectation of the June release, hopefully things get slightly better and people want to start building and actually can build new systems in the future. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading all your comments. I'm Dmitry, thanks so much for watching. Check out this other relevant content. Thanks to Lian Li for supplying this prototype. It was truly a pleasure. I'll talk to you in the next video.